Hello, I'm Dr. Megan Hofmann.
And I'm Dr. Vicky Queralt.
We're clinical psychologists specialising in child healthcare, and we're also mums.
From our work in hospitals to our chats on the playground, we've encountered countless examples of strength and courage from families facing health issues around their children.
Whether it's going for a blood test or managing a chronic health condition, we hear about the challenges and obstacles, and we see the parents and caregivers trying to overcome them.
In this podcast, we want to shine a light on these families and delve into their healthcare stories to discover what's worked for them and what might be helpful for you too.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Little Journey Spotlight Sessions, the last episode of this current series.
Today we're delighted to be joined by Lizzy.
Lizzy is mum to a fantastically charismatic 12-year-old girl who, like us, has a passion for musical theatre. As Lizzy explains, her daughter has received a long list of diagnoses, including autism, 2 genetic deletions, global developmental delay, and sensory processing disorder.
In our session today, Lizzy talks to us about the hospital interactions she's had with her daughter and how she's learnt to get the most out of these visits.
We are really looking forward to sharing her experiences and insights with you. Welcome, Lizzy. So can we just start off today, Lizzy, with you telling us just a bit about your family and a little bit about your journey with your daughter?
So I am married. I've been married for 15 years. And my small human is now 12. So when she was very tiny, she couldn't sit up. So she didn't sit up properly until about 9 months of age. And that was kind of the start of thinking, oh, it's not quite going as we expected it to. And then she didn't walk for a long time, and then she didn't talk for a long time. And I was like, oh, it's not maybe going very well. But I had convinced myself. I was like, no, I'm doing great. This mothering thing, I've got it. And I'd said to my husband, because he'd said to me, I don't think she's like developing as she should do. And I was like, well, you're never even here. So how would you know? If you're so serious about it, you go and book an appointment. So off he trundled. And I genuinely was like, oh, he's not going to book an appointment. Fine, everything is fine. And he booked the appointment, and then we got a referral to community pediatrics. And the consultant at the time, as I was kind of running him through all of the things that I had noticed, he just kept going, And I sort of went, oh no, because that sound means there is something, or I've got a suspicion that there might be something, because, obviously with consultants, you're not going to get like the exact answer on that day. They're going to want to run like a battery of tests. They're going to want to see you and all of these different things. And that was the first kind of suspicion that I had, that everything wasn't quite going the way we thought it was. So yeah, that's where we started. And then it was kind of like 11, no, I'm lying. It was like another 9 years before she was actually diagnosed with the full list that we now have. And yeah, it's been a journey.
Can you tell us what's on that list, Lizzy, or what are the main?
Okay, so it's a very long list. It's like 2/3 of an A4 sheet of paper. So it's a long list. But the main ones for her are, so she has 2 genetic deletions, one FOXP2 and one which is unique. She has developmental delay, so she's about 4 years academically delayed. She's been diagnosed autistic, so that's happened in the last sort of 18 months. It's not dyspraxia anymore. Developmental coordination disorder, dyscalculia, dyslexia. It's just a long list.
Gosh, that sounds like such an awful lot on your daughter's plate and on your plate, obviously, as well. And
yeah,
I'm If you could paint a little bit of a picture for us of kind of how your daughter goes about her everyday life and kind of what life looks like for her.
So her everyday life, if I could describe it, is a bit like um it's a bit like the bit in Snow White where she's like skipping through a forest and there are birds singing and like all the animals are around her. That is her. I would say she lives in her own little world. And inside her world, that is what happened. Um, so other than getting her up in the morning and getting her ready, which can mm, at least half the time does end in some level of like physical fisticuffs because she doesn't want to get ready and she doesn't want to go. Once she gets out of the door, sometimes I have to physically get her into the van. So she goes to special schools, so sometimes I have to physically get her in the van, and I'm like wrestling, like arm barring her so I can get her in and put the seat on. Stop messing around, just get in. So I'm getting her in, I'm closing the door, and I turn around to the escort, and I'm like, "Have a great day, everyone. Well done, friend. We made it." And off she trundles. And then she arrives at school and she is like, da, da, good morning, everybody. Hello, hello. I'm here. I'm here. And she just has like real main character energy.
Mm.
That is her all over. So the tricky bits are very tricky, but the bits that are really nice are just full of laughter and joy and just a lot of misunderstandings that I find very funny. So like just some of the language that she uses and the things that she says are just so joyful to me. So it's a real I said to my husband, it's very Jekyll and Hyde. You know, it's one side or the other. You either get that kind of joyful, exciting, wonderful sing-song side of her, or she's like a full-scale demon. There is no in between. There's no in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what my typical day looks like.
Oh, and it must be what makes me think, Lizzy, it must be quite challenging for you as a mum to see both of those sides and like, no, we're not quite sure what to expect.
Which one is going to turn up?
Yeah, but it's so lovely that you can really see the joy that you have with her. Lizzy, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about kind of your experience accessing healthcare with your daughter.
Okay.
What's that been for you and for her?
So in terms of accessing healthcare, we have had to access a huge amount of healthcare. To get to this point, I think we've had something like 300 different appointments.
Wow.
So that's a huge amount. So one thing I will say is this: as much as the NHS gets a bad rap, I am so blessed and so grateful to it every single day, because there is no way that we would have been able to personally finance this journey. There is just no way. So I am very grateful. Even though the system isn't the best, and even though the system moves very slowly, I'm still grateful. So I'm still very grateful for it. But the journey through healthcare has been a real eye-opener in terms of we kind of entered into it with this real strong feeling of, okay, well, they are the doctor. They know all of the things, okay? They've totally got it. We don't have to worry about anything. We are just a passenger in this car. And as you go through that journey, you learn that you cannot be a passenger. You've got to be a co-pilot. So you've got to work with your specialists. You've got to work alongside them. You've got to turn up ready with your information, with your knowledge, with your questions. You have to show up with your paperwork in good order. So it's not like you to make this work, you cannot be passive. You have to be very active. You have to be really involved, and you have to be prepared to be difficult, not rude, you know, because these people, this is their job and they should be able to turn up to their job and be treated with respect and fairly. But you are going to have to be prepared to be difficult and to advocate for your child, because especially when your child isn't verbal, not only are you their advocate, you are also their voice. So you showing up in that situation ready is absolutely critical in terms of making the best of that journey.
Lizzy, it's really insightful to hear you explain it in that way. Could you able to give like a specific example where you have had to be like that advocate?
So with my daughter, one of the things that she finds specific types of situations very difficult. And so when I would go into appointments with people and I'd be like, listen, I understand that you've got like 16 children to see today. And I understand that your clinic is probably already behind, because we would always be booked in like the first appointment of the day and they would somehow always be behind. So I'd be like, listen, to make life easy for you, here is a potted history of my child. This is a summary, okay? So you haven't got to be like, oh, I have to read this giant stack of paperwork. This is a half-page summary of the critical information that you need to know about this child. A, because it saved me a lot of time having to repeat the same information again and again and again and again. And the other thing is, because our hospital is a teaching hospital, and absolutely rightly, junior doctors need to get experience kind of speaking to parents, dealing with parents, all of these types of things. I would like make copies. They would be redacted copies, but they would be copies. And I'd be like, right, here you go. So when you have to go and like kind of write up your mock notes, you've got something to kind of take with you. So the first time that happened, the consultant said, would you like a job? He was like, would you like a job? I think you'd be great here. And I was like, I've kind of got 2 jobs already. So maybe no, but I appreciate your kindness. And that's what I mean in terms of you being active.
Yeah.
You show up ready.
It sounds like through your experience of all your healthcare
Yes.
appointments, you learn over that time that actually it's really helpful to have that information just documented on a piece of paper of your daughter's history and just to pass it over.
Yeah, it helps a lot, because I think a lot of the time when your child has additional needs, you spend a lot of time explaining to people your child's backstory. And actually, we've got 15 minutes. So I would rather spend that 15 minutes actually talking about where are we right now? What are the challenges that we are having right now? And how, if at all, can you help us with that? Rather than doing this long diatribe of a backstory. And it's not that it isn't relevant. It absolutely is relevant. However, in that short time, we haven't got a huge, it's not a huge amount of time to get some quite chunky things dealt with. So that was my thing. I was like, right, okay, I've got to make sure I'm, making the most of each of these appointments.
And what would you do for the clinician? Like, have you ever thought about using like a hospital passport or those kind of things?
No, because I think by the time we'd heard about a hospital passport, we'd kind of gotten out of most of the times that we would need to be in hospital. So if somebody had told me at the beginning, then I would have been like, yeah, amazing. This is great. But I didn't hear about a hospital passport until, I want to say maybe 18 months ago. And bearing in mind, we'd had 300 and odd appointments. Nobody had ever mentioned it.
What sort of difference do you think it might have made if you had heard about it?
I think the difference that it might have made is a bit like the summary, in that you don't have to keep saying exactly the same thing over and over again. Yeah. Because the hard thing with repeating that story over and over and again is you tend to ad lib, and you tend to kind of like truncate things. But some stuff is more important to different specialists. And if you're telling the same story over and over again, and you're kind of taking stuff out and you're kind of truncating it, they might miss the thing that's actually relevant to them. But also with the hospital passport, it's kind of like your advocate before you get there, isn't it? So from a clinician's perspective, they can look at that passport and go, right, okay, so if I want to, speak to this child, this is how I need to kind of speak to them. Or actually, I need to speak to the parent and but turn to them and ask them the question and then kind of expect the parent to answer. It's all of those different things that just make the child feel more comfortable and the parent feel more confident. And I think, yeah, we definitely missed out on having something like that. So if you don't have one, definitely get one, because it is so helpful to you to just take some of that mental load off in terms of what you have to remember.
We've heard how you have to, particularly how helpful it is to sort of advocate and provide that information of the backstory and things. Now she's got older and she's 12, and I'm just wondering about that age, how she feels about going to the healthcare appointments and how she communicates. Has there been any shift from how you communicate for her or support her to her having a bit more autonomy?
Yes. So she's a lot more demanding now, because she can be. So she had to have some dental work done, but because it was a root canal and she would not have tolerated sedation of any description, it had to be done under general anaesthetic. So we got to the hospital and we're being asked to do different things. So the nursing staff would say, okay, we need to weigh her, we need to do this, we need to do this. So I would say to her, right, my love, we've got 3 things to do. This is the first thing. So let's go and do that first. And then we would do that bit. So I would then be kind of breaking down the instructions on her behalf so that she knew this and then this and then this. However, when the play therapist arrived, because again, she's been to hospital enough that she understands the different uniforms mean different things. So she saw the person come in with the red t-shirt and she was like, excellent. My helper has arrived. And so the play therapist arrived and was like, oh, this is what you're having done today. And, and then obviously was explaining the whole thing. And then they were kind of talking about it. And the play therapist asked her, oh, have you got like a favorite like cartoon character or something like that? And she reeled off a couple of like what I would call the super popular ones. And obviously my kid went, I want Fancy Nancy. And the play therapist was like, I'm sorry, who? I was like, oh, Fancy Nancy. She is a ballerina. She speaks French. It's a show on the Disney Channel, tralala. So off she trundles. There's me thinking we're going to be in trouble here, friends. This isn't going to go well because she's going to lose her temper if she doesn't get what she wants. And then she comes back with this Fancy Nancy booklet, and it was like all the explanation of like what. So I don't know how she did it. It's obviously like a template that she's got made up, but it was like a full, and all the characters were Fancy Nancy, and you opened it and you could see like Fancy Nancy stood where they've got like the sedation room, and then like with a doctor with a mask on their face, and she actually like took her step by step through each of the things, and it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And we took it home with us, and I think she's probably still got it somewhere because she loved it that much.
That is amazing.
Personalised support, isn't it? Personalised, explaining how the procedure is going to be.
Lizzy, as you're probably aware, we're big on preparation for hospital.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about how you help to prepare your daughter for all her healthcare visits?
So in terms of preparing, we're quite fortunate. Like I said, we've had like 300 odd appointments at different hospitals. So she's quite used to going to hospital, and she has, and I don't understand, now I know how it happened, but once it kind of became an ingrained thing, that was it. So her process of going to hospital is, I don't tell her anything before, because the question would be, is it now? Is it now? Is it now? On loop until, it's time. So it would normally be on the morning of, this morning, we need to go to the hospital. Which hospital? Well, we're going to this hospital. And the reason why she's asking this hospital is because part of her process is when the appointment is finished, she gets to go to the cafe. So she understands which hospitals have which cafes, so which cafe she's going to get to. So before she's even like left the front door, she knows which hospital it is, which cafe she's going to get to, and most importantly, what she's going to get when she gets to the cafe. Like that's the most important conversation that she's going to have all day. So she will happily go off to hospital because she loves it there. She thinks it's great. And very often we end up having a bit of a meltdown because she doesn't want to go home. Like that's how much she enjoys being at hospital, which, my husband and I look at each other and we're like, this cannot be real. This cannot be happening to us. All the other children can't wait to get out of here. And she's like, no, don't take me back to that terrible house. Just leave me here. So we are very, very fortunate that she has a very positive association between going to hospital and what happens when you're at hospital. Even though she's had some not very nice experiences there, she still has a very positive kind of relationship with those two things. And that saved us massively.
Is there a positive association because of the reward that you
I think so. I think because she loves a cafe.
Yeah.
She loves a cafe. She knows probably every cafe in a 15-mile radius from our house. And they know her. So that's how much we go to the cafe.
Oh, but Lizzy, it sounds like you're really playing to her strengths. You know what she's interested in and what's going to motivate her.
Absolutely.
I was just curious, Lizzy, do you know when you said you know to not prepare, we would prepare her on the day?
Yeah.
I know like a lot of caregivers and parents will always, if they've got a hospital procedure like an MRI scan or a blood draw, they'll be thinking, when should I tell my child?
Yeah.
Obviously that changes. I don't know, a parent knows what their child is like.
Yes.
So how do you decide that? Like
So I have decided that from just it not going well before. So we've tried the night before, tomorrow morning, when we get up, we're going to do this, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. But actually, what that gives her is more time to worry about it. So even though she's happy when she gets there, she isn't necessarily always happy to go. So for her, the less time that she has to feel worried about it, that's better for her. However, many children need a lot more like prep time. So I suppose as parents, it's about understanding how much prep time does this child need to get them through the door. Because once you get there, there's so much more help there because the people that are there are professionals. People that work in pediatrics have got so many like different little things that they know that they're like, oh, I'm just going to do this and I'm going to blow this like glove up or whatever we're going to do. All these different things that they do to make children feel more comfortable, less worried, all of that stuff. But you don't get that until you get through the door. So it's like, as a parent, this gap, what do I need to do to fill that gap? So that she turns up, like the child turns up in the best way possible. And also that as a parent, you are not like up to here. Your nervous system isn't up to here before you turn up. Because I think that's the thing. We worry very much about the children going to hospital. But as parents, we forget that actually this is quite traumatic for us as well. And we tend to go, I'm just going to squash this emotion down into this tiny box and I'll deal with it another day. And then you never deal with it another day. And then the next time something really tricky happens, you find yourself literally hanging on by your fingertips. So it's about, okay, I need to prepare this child, but I also need to prepare myself for this, like whatever it is that we've got coming up.
Such an important consideration we as parents, we're all about how can we make it easier for our child, how can we get through this, how can we reduce the worries and the anxiety, but it's so important to consider the parents' nervous system as well in it, because our kids' nervous system often mirrors and reflects our own. If we're anxious, they're more likely to be anxious. But also just about that importance of self-care and the long long journey, that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and it's
Absolutely.
about looking after yourself in the long term. On that note, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do to calm that nervous system in face of all these healthcare visits?
So I think for me, like I said, with my little lady, she doesn't need that much prep time. Whereas I know that I need prep time. So I need to know, okay, I need to leave my house at this time. But I also need to give myself at least, because of the time of the appointment, I need to give myself at least another half an hour or more for traffic. Because the last thing you want to be doing is feeling like you're running late on the way to an appointment that you've maybe waited a year for. Like that just is not a good place to be. So I'm that person. I'm like doing each of the steps. I'm working back each of the steps. Have I got her favorite this? Is her iPad charged? Have I got her ear defenders? Where is the so-and-so? What's in her bag right now? Which snacks have I prepared? All of those things I must do before I go to bed that night, because if I don't, it won't happen. And if I'm not prepared, the whole lot goes out the window.
Yeah. So preparation is really key for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because, like you said, that feeling of like anxiousness in the parent, the children definitely pick up on it. And I want her to wake up and be like, oh, we're going to hospital today. And she's like, yes, gingerbread man, pret a manger, let's do it. Like she's ready, But the only way that I can feel that confident is because I've got all the things. I've got everything has been charged, everything's by the door. We're picking stuff up and we're walking out the door, and we're gonna get this hospital appointment done, and it will be fine because I know that I'm prepared.
Yeah. And I was curious, am I right in thinking that she has to have multiple or repeat blood tests quite regularly?
So she doesn't have to have repeat blood tests, but she will completely self-destruct when it's anything to do with needles, anything whatsoever. So because she's had to have a couple of surgeries, in the run up to each of those surgeries, you obviously have to have bloods done. So the first time we had bloods done, I physically held her down on the bed. Like I had her between my legs. I had like a wrestler, one of my legs over her legs, holding up her arms so that they could take this blood. And it was awful. It was an awful experience for her. It was a terrible experience for me. And I was like, okay, listen, friends, next time we do this, we need to do something different. So the next time, because I was able to say to them before that next blood draw, listen, last time, this is where we ended up. So I need you to kind of send me your best team so that we can make this happen. So the second time around, it wasn't great. She was still a bit distressed, but we got it done without having to physically restrain her. The third time round, again, because I kind of said, well, listen, you sent me your best team. We did XYZ things. None of those things worked. This is the thing that worked. So the third time around, we were like, yeah, although it was still distressing for her, we managed to get it done and it didn't take half an hour. So now it's a bit trial and error. And what I will say for other parents to kind of remember is that you don't know, and you are absolutely doing your very best. So each time you have to go through this process, it will get better because you will learn. But you have to give yourself a huge amount of grace, because on the days that you don't know the answer or you haven't been able to advocate, or you aren't prepared because it isn't a situation you've come up against, what you will tend to do is come home with like a real weight on your chest. Like I failed, like I didn't prepare them, or I didn't tell the specialist, or I didn't, and now look at the situation. But actually, one thing I will say about these small humans is they can be very tricksy, but they are very forgiving. And, you're carrying that horrible weight of guilt around, and they're just like skipping through a meadow. So you can only do what you can do. You can be as well prepared as you can, but there will be times when you're not prepared and it won't go to plan, or it won't go how you want it to. And you have to give yourself grace in those moments, because if you don't, the next time something tricky happens, you'll just spiral further down that kind of like, oh, I'm terrible, I'm a failure, I'm the worst mummy in the world. You just keep going further down that thing. So yeah, just, it isn't always going to go your way, but you will always get better.
Self-compassion, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Lizzy, can I just go one point about the blood test that she's had? And it sounds like it was horrific having to kind of restrain her, but it sounds like you had a slightly more positive experience each time.
Yeah.
What was it specifically what adjustments were made for her so that it didn't happen?
So the third time lucky, as I refer to it as, we went in early. She got a special snack prior. Do you know what I mean? We went to the cafe before we even went to go and get our bloods done. So she had her gingerbread man. She was like, I'm ready. Whatever you're going to do, let's do it. So we got into the appointment. We went in early so that she could have the numbing cream put on. So then we went off to the cafe. Then we went back after the numbing cream had kind of had enough time to do what it needed to do. So then we had the person who was drawing the blood and the play specialist there. So the play specialist had got one of her favorite books. So I'd brought that with me. So that was The Fish Who Could Wish at that time. And I still remember that book from cover to cover. So the play specialist sat reading The Fish Who Could Wish. She sat with me on my lap. I was able to effectively hold her. She was sat on my lap facing that direction. I held her with one arm, and the play specialist put the book here, and her hand was out in the distance, and they did what needed to be done. Yes, once the needle went in, she was like, hang on a minute, what the hell's going on around these parts? But she kind of managed, like she got through that. And that's kind of the steps that we went through. And it's trial and error. It is trial and error.
But also sounds like you're very prepared, Lizzy. You're much more experienced.
I try to be.
I try to motivate her. Yeah.
I think when we first started out, when stuff wouldn't kind of go the way I expected it to, I found myself very frustrated because I'm a terrible perfectionist. And it wasn't that I was frustrated with her. I was just frustrated with the situation, because I was like, how have I found myself in this situation? Like, other people haven't even seen a doctor with their child before, and mine literally sees one every other week at the moment. So I found myself very, very frustrated, and I found that really, really hard to take. But as we kind of did it more, it was just like, okay, be prepared, or be prepared to feel really bad about it. So it was kind of like, it wasn't an option.
Yeah.
It just wasn't an option not to be prepared. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What do you do, Lizzy, to look after yourself and get you through all these challenging moments?
So, before, what I used to do was snack a lot. So I used to, and it wasn't food because I wasn't hungry. It was just like, I just need something. I just need something in my life, please. So I used to snack a lot. So then two kind of big things happened. Thing number one, I got into like a coaching group. So this person is like, their kind of premise is really around getting ourselves out of arguing with the reality of your situation. So rather than saying, this thing is happening to me, this is the worst, why me, tra-la-la, it's about coming to grips with your reality. So that helped me massively. Going to coaching changed my perspective entirely on having my child. So I went from, why me? What did I ever do to anybody? How could this happen to me? And all of those feelings are entirely valid. And if you're still in that place, please don't feel this is not a judgment on you at all. I went from that feeling to going, the universe has done this to me on purpose because I needed this version of a child. Because if I'd had a version of a child who was like me, I probably would have repeated the cycles that my parents did in raising me. And I probably would have been quite just very demanding of her. Whereas because this is the version of child I have, I can't be that person. I can't be like, you're going to have you're going to do Saturday school and you're going to go to these lessons, you're going to go and do this, and you're literally filling up her diary. She won't cope. And she literally would just be like, absolutely not. You're not going to make me. So to me, that was the biggest shift for me, from going from why me to me for a reason. Because she has opened my eyes to so many different things in terms of just being able to say no because I want to say no. Like, I haven't got to give an excuse. Like, I never had that experience before. Whereas she's just like, no, not doing it. It brings me no joy. I will not. And so I'm like, oh, this is great. I love this for us. And I just have a lot more time to enjoy life now because of how she is and what she needs. So that was big thing number one. But the thing that I think has been a real game changer in terms of how I look after myself and how I value myself has been going to counselling. And quite honestly, I genuinely think that if your child has a diagnosis of any description, or you know that your child is going to need to be in hospital a lot, I genuinely think counselling should be offered to those parents, because you are going to have to rebuild entirely what your perception of parenting is with no tools. So going to counselling has given me the tools to rebuild my perception of parenting. What do I think? What is parenting? Like, what does that look like? So rather than kind of being trapped in that really sad and awful place where you are comparing what you have to what other people seem to be doing, you're actually like, no, I don't have to worry about that. That is great for them. That's the life that they have. That's the situation that they're in. That's their context. This is my context. And in my context, we are going to be gentle with ourselves. We are going to be kind to ourselves. We're going to be compassionate with ourselves. We're going to value ourselves as much as we value the work that we are doing for these children. That's what counselling has given me that I didn't have before. And I'm so grateful to my counsellor, because she's a very challenging person, but you never see it coming. Like, she's so gentle and so quiet. And then she kind of will like ask a question. You're like, oh, oh no.
Yeah.
I hadn't even considered that. And that for me has been just a beautiful experience. And seeing her on a monthly basis is part of my self-care routine. I'm like, this, she is part of my budget in terms of what I need to do for me. That she's massive part of that.
It's great to hear how compassionate you are towards yourself, and to see that, be so reflective as well, and kind of see that, I don't know, growth mindset or mindset shift, and just really kind of embrace the life and parenting that you're having to do. And
I think we are trying to enjoy where we are rather than worrying or feeling sad about what other people have.
Yeah. Not easy. Not easy.
Not easy.
I was wondering, just as our final question, Lizzy, if you could tell us if there was one wish that you could have for changing healthcare settings to make them be more appropriate or more supportive for children, what would it be?
Ooh, tricky question to finish on. So I think if we were going to have something, it would be something for parents. And the reason I say that is because the children, as I said before, they turn up at the front door, and for the most part, obviously not every doctor is going to be great, and I get that, but for the most part, you show up at the front door and it's like, come in, hello, and it's like a really like lovely time. Whereas for a parent, because you, especially if you've never experienced this before, you're basically going into an environment with people who are exceptionally educated, and you kind of are a bit in awe. So you're not really prepared, and you don't know what questions are stupid questions, what questions you should be asking, what information you should know. You just don't really know. I think that's the thing I would wish that we had more of, that there was more support for parents so that they could come and feel confident, because the children will always be looked after. The difficulty we have is we're not really looking after parents, and actually the parent is the person who is answering most of these questions on their children's behalf.
What sort of support would that look like? Can you give an example?
What would that look like? I just think, I suppose a bit like what you're doing now with Little Journey, in terms of creating information for people. So before you go to hospital, this is what that looks like. I think it's that, really, the ability to say to yourself as a parent, okay, right, I have to prepare my child for this thing. So if I've got a bit of information on what that looks like, or what that's going to feel like, or what that's going to sound like, then I can say, oh, right, so when you go and do this thing, this is what's going to happen. And then there'll be a noise, but then after the noise, there'll be this, and then this will happen. So I think what you're doing fills that gap in a way, because parents are able to look at the thing before they show it to their children and say, right, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what's happening. And you can create a level of excitement around it. So it's not like this big, horrible, scary thing. It's like, this machine you're going to stand in it, and it's going to go all the way around your head, and it's going to take these pictures of all your teeth, and then we're going to be able to look at it afterwards. So that kind of stuff is what makes the experience much more something to kind of like be excited for, rather than something to be anxious about.
So it's like preparing the parent, isn't it? Okay,
yes.
And helping them, and sort of containing any of their worries, and because the information there is helping them set out what's going to happen. So when the parent feels like, they can then relay that to the child and have that element of playfulness and excitement. And
you can be excited about something that you feel confident about. But if you don't feel confident about it, you're kind of going in blind. Your child is also going in blind. It's really, really hard. It's really hard to do that, because you're frightened. So you're like, no, everything's going to be fine. But they can hear your voices like right up here, rather than, oh my goodness, I didn't tell you. We are going to hospital today, and at hospital, we are going to do this, and this, and we're seeing this doctor, and they're probably going to do, do you know what I mean? You're making it seem like an adventure. The whole thing can feel like an adventure, but as parents, you kind of have to feel prepared to do that.
Lizzy, I could carry on listening to you for hours. There's so many more questions I'd love to ask you, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up, sadly.
Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, Lizzy. And yeah, I'm absolutely bowled over by how much you have learned on this journey you've been on, and what an amazing mum you are to your daughter.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you so much for speaking to me today. It's been really wonderful to kind of share all of those things with you, more because I think parenting special needs children can be really, really lonely, and having the ability to maybe not meet, but at least hear that other people are having the same kind of struggles, how they've kind of dealt with it, what they've done to kind of make it a bit easier on themselves. It's massive, because when I started in this journey, there was nothing. So I'm super grateful to you both for that, because it is it's life-changing, having that feeling that somebody knows what you're going through, and somebody is trying to help, is massive. So yeah, I'm super grateful to both of you, and I hope that you keep banging this drum because we need it more than ever now. And yeah, I just wish you both an epic rest of your Tuesday. And yeah, I'm just super excited to hear the end result, which is going to be, I'm so excited.
Oh,
As are we.
so much, Lizzy.
Thank you so much, Lizzy.
We've really enjoyed speaking with Lizzy today and hope you found it helpful.
To all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this series. If you'd like to be notified of any future Spotlight sessions, please click subscribe on the Little Journey YouTube channel. Bye for now.
Bye.